The arena of mockery. The red sun hung low over the arena, casting long shadows across the metal floor. The crowd was loud, screaming in voices that echoed off the stone walls. Thousands of alien eyes watched the center of the arena, where a single figure stood, small, quiet, and completely unarmed. He was human. No one knew his name. No one cared. Two alien guards dragged him forward. His clothes were torn. His face was dirty. His hands were tied behind his back. Still, he walked without fear. His eyes didn't look at the crowd. They were locked on the one standing across. From him, Carol. She was a warrior of legend, 7 feet tall, her skin a dark silver color, armor shining under the twin moons. Her sword was bigger than the human's entire body. She stood tall and proud, the crowd chanting her name. "This," she said, pointing her sword toward the human, "is what they send to challenge us?" The crowd laughed. Some threw things into the arena. Someone shouted, "He's already dead." Carell smiled, slow and cruel. She stepped forward, her boots hitting the ground with heavy thuds. She looked down at the human like he was an insect. "Where is your weapon, little man?" she asked, circling him. "Did you lose it? Or did they never give you one?" The human said nothing. She stopped walking and leaned close to him. "What are you without your weapons?" she whispered. "Nothing." But the human didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He just stared at her, calm, quiet. The arena master stepped forward from the platform above. "Let the entertainment begin," he shouted. "Release him!" The guards cut the ropes. The human's hands dropped to his sides. He didn't move. Carell raised her sword and took a battle stance. "You have 10 seconds to run," she said. "Run, and maybe I'll make your end quick." The human blinked, looked at the open gate behind him, then back at her. He turned and started walking toward the gate. Not running, walking. The crowd booed. Someone shouted, "Coward!" Carell laughed again. "He's not even worth the fight." But just before the human disappeared into the shadows of the gate, he stopped, turned his head. His voice was quiet, but in the silence that followed, everyone heard him. "I'll be back," he said. "With your sword." Carell's smile faded for a second. Only a second. Then she shook her head and waved her hand. Foolish human. The gate closed behind him, the arena lights dimmed, and the next fight was announced. The crowd turned its attention elsewhere, laughing and betting on the next battle, but not Carell. She stood still, watching the gate. Somewhere deep inside the alien fortress, the human walked alone. Cold air blew through the tunnels. Lights flickered. Overhead, he passed by guards without making a sound. Some never saw him. Others were left unconscious behind him. He had no weapon, but he had something else. He had a plan, and he had time. In the farthest part of the fortress, locked behind 3 energy shields, was the Hall of Champions. Inside that hall, on a stand, made of glowing crystal, rested the sword of Carell. The sword was not just metal, it was alive. It had chosen Carell long ago. No other being had ever held it without burning. But tonight, it would be touched by a human. Back in the arena, the crowd cheered as blood hit the floor from another battle. Carell sat in her seat, drinking from a silver cup, but her mind wasn't on the fight. It was on the human. She didn't know why, but something about his eyes had made her uneasy, too calm, too focused. Just a trick, she told herself. A little drama before he dies. But far below, a door clicked open. A lock turned green. Inside, the sword chamber. The lights turned on one by one as the human stepped forward. He stood in front of the sword. It glowed softly, as if it was breathing. He reached out. No alarms, no resistance. His fingers touched the hilt and the sword and did not burn him. Instead, it pulsed with light. A soft whisper filled the room. "You are not one of them," it said, "yet you are worthy." The human smiled for the first time. He lifted the sword. Outside in the arena, Carell dropped her cup. She didn't know why. But something had changed. The escape nobody saw coming. The fortress was supposed to be unbreakable. For 200 years, no prisoner had escaped it. Built from the bones of a dead moon, guarded by machines and living sentries, it floated in orbit around the red planet like a sleeping beast. Until tonight. Karel couldn't sleep. She lay in her private chamber, high above the arena. The cheers from the earlier fights had died out, but her mind was still loud. Loud with questions, loud with doubt. Why hadn't the human fought? Why hadn't he begged? Why? Had he said that? "I'll be back, with your sword." It wasn't the words, it was the way he said them, as if it was a promise. Somewhere deep in the lower levels of the fortress, a red light turned blue. The security system didn't notice. The guards didn't notice. But something had changed. Inside the Hall of Champions, the human now stood with the sword in his hand. Its glow painted his face in gold and fire. He didn't look surprised, not even a little. He had come for this, and it had accepted him. A soft hum filled the room. The sword's voice spoke only to him now. "You are not their kind. But you have their fire. We have waited so long." The human stepped out of the chamber. The door slid shut behind him silently. He walked into the shadows. 3 guards found the door minutes later. They opened it. It was empty. One of them turned to alert, command, then fell unconscious before his body hit the floor. The others didn't even have time to scream. In the control tower above, alarms started blinking. Silent ones. System failures. Power surges. Internal doors locked. Others forced open. A small red mark began moving across the map of the fortress. Slow. Steady. "What's moving through Section Delta?" the operator asked. "Nothing," the commander replied. "That section is sealed. It must be a glitch." But the mark kept moving, toward the surface. Karel was called back to the command center. Her eyes scanned the screens. She saw the broken doors, the unconscious guards, the security footage frozen at key times. And finally, she saw the sword chamber, empty, her hand curled into a fist. "Seal the exits," she growled. "Now." But the exits were already locked, from the inside, in a dark corridor. The human moved like a shadow. The sword hummed in his hand, adjusting to him, learning from him. The fortress shook slightly. A timed blast planted hours ago went off in the engine room. Not big enough to destroy anything. Just enough to create panic. Just enough to blind the sensors. He had planned it all before he even entered the arena. Karel watched in disbelief as systems failed one by one. "How is this possible?" The commander said. "He was unarmed. He was just a human," Karel whispered. On the outside platform near the shuttle bay, the wind howled. Red dust flew across the landing pads. A lone guard stood watching the stars. He never saw the figure behind him. Just a quick flash of light, then darkness. The human entered the shuttle silently. It was an alien design, but he knew how to fly it. He had studied their ships for months. He had waited, watched, learned. As the engines lit up, a blast door tried to shut. He sliced through it with a single swing of the sword. Outside, guards poured into the hangar. Too late. Karel arrived on the scene seconds after the shuttle took off. She stood at the edge of the platform, watching it vanish into the stars. "Track him," she ordered. But the radar was dark. Nothing. He had jammed the signal. Her sword was gone. And so was the man who had sworn to return with it. Hours later, in the quiet of her chamber, Karel watched the security footage again. Frame by frame. The human walking. The sword glowing. The final image before the cameras cut out. His eyes, looking straight at the lens, not afraid, not running, not weak. The High Council called her. They demanded answers. He was just a human, one shouted. "How could this happen?" another asked. Karel said nothing. Finally, one voice rose above the rest. "Bring him back," it said. "Or don't come back at all." Across the galaxy, in the dark silence of space, the human sat, Inside the stolen shuttle, the sword rested across his lap. He closed his eyes. "They will chase you," the sword said. "They will fear you. Are you ready?" He opened his eyes. "I've been ready for a long time." A sword not meant for humans, space was cold and endless. The stolen shuttle drifted between stars, silent and invisible. Its engines were off, its lights dimmed. But inside, the human was awake. He sat cross-legged on the floor, the alien sword across his lap. It glowed faintly, breathing, like a living thing. For hours he hadn't moved, but the sword had. It pulsed with warmth, then cold. It whispered. It tested him. It watched him. "This is not for you," the voice said at first. "Your kind has no bloodline, no claim, no history." He didn't speak. He simply closed his eyes and waited. The sword showed him visions. Old ones. A time before humans even knew the stars. A time when the champions of the galaxy fought across planets, each bonded to a living blade. Each chosen, trained, honored. But the sword he held now, it had killed champions, hundreds. Not because it was evil, but because it rejected weakness. It accepted only one thing, worth. After every battle, it was returned to the vault, waiting, watching, sleeping, until now. "Why do you carry me?" it asked. "You have no mark, no clan, no right." "I don't need your permission," the human finally said. "You chose me the moment she mocked me." The sword pulsed, not in anger, in curiosity. "You felt nothing when she insulted. You no fear, no pride, just silence." "Why?" He looked at it, his voice low, controlled. "Because I knew what would come next." Across the galaxy, Karel stood before the High Council of the Zahari Empire. 13 beings of different species, all draped in energy cloaks, all older than she could guess. She kneeled, swordless, ashamed. "You let a human take our blade," one hissed. "Do you understand what that weapon is?" Carol lifted her head. "The sword chose him." The room went still. "Impossible," said another. "That blade burns the unworthy." "Then why is he alive?" she asked. They had no answer. Back in the shuttle, the human now stood. He held the sword in both hands, testing it, swinging slowly. Carefully. It moved with him, faster than thought, lighter than air. It didn't resist. It adapted. Every move he made, the sword echoed. He wasn't just learning it. The sword was learning him. The human walked to the control panel. With a few quiet taps, a destination was set. Not Earth. Not a hiding place. He was going back to them, to the ones who had laughed. "You do not seek escape," the sword said. "You seek something else." "Respect," he replied. "Not just for me. For all of us." The sword paused. "Are there more like you?" He smiled. "Too many to count." On the Zahari homeworld, panic spread quietly. Sword chambers were sealed. Training facilities locked down. The word human was being passed around like a ghost story. "He escaped with the sword," they whispered. "He's coming back." Many laughed at first. Then someone pulled the surveillance footage. They watched him walk out of the vault. They watched the sword glow in his hand. They saw what Karel had seen. The calm in his eyes. The silence before the storm. The shuttle came, out of warp near the outer moons, not cloaked, not hidden, bold. The Zahari War Council saw the signal. "One ship," the general said. "Just one?" Karel narrowed her eyes. "No, not just one. Him." They sent a fleet, 3 interceptors, 10 fighters, fully armed. The human watched them approach. He stood in the center of the shuttle, helmet in hand, sword resting against his back. The ship shook as the fighters locked on. "What now?" the sword asked. You are outnumbered. Good, he said. Let them see what one of us can do. The shuttle opened mid-space. No protection, no pressure suit. The human stepped out surrounded by a personal field made from tech they didn't recognize, because he had made it himself. His feet touched nothing, only stars around him. And the sword. The first two fighters opened fire. Beams of light screamed toward him. The human moved once. The sword moved faster. The beams split, then disappeared. The ships exploded before they knew what hit them. Carol stood on the command bridge watching the feed go dark. What is he? Someone whispered. She didn't answer. She already knew. The final ship turned to run. The human didn't. Chase. He floated alone, the sword spinning once in his hand. A message played on every Zahari screen across the Empire. His voice. Calm. Sharp. Final. You mocked the unarmed. Now, I carry your champion's blade. Next time, bring more than pride. He vanished before they could trace him. The sword dimmed, satisfied. What now? It asked. They will never forget you. They're not supposed to, he said. That was the point. The return, the Zahari homeworld hadn't changed. Still glowing cities, still floating towers, still alien ships moving like silver birds across a pale green sky. But something felt different. People walked faster now. Soldiers were everywhere. Whispers moved through the crowd like wind through fire. He's still out there. The human. The sword chose him. No one said his name because no one knew it. Karel stood at the balcony of the war temple high above the capital. Below her, hundreds of elite soldiers trained in silence. They moved like machines, perfect and fast, but Carol's mind wasn't on them. It was on him, the human, the one she had mocked, the one who had taken her blade. She hadn't slept since that day, not because of fear, because of shame. A message came, through small, encrypted, quiet. She opened it alone, no voice, no face, just 4 words. I'm coming. At dawn. That night, the skies above the city were filled with patrol ships. The entire war temple went into lockdown. Weapons loaded, towers on high alert. They were ready for a battle. They didn't understand what was really coming, dawn. The twin suns rose over the horizon, burning gold across the towers. A sound echoed in the sky. Not a roar. A hum. A low, vibrating tone that made birds scatter and glass tremble. The crowd looked up. One ship. No escort. No weapons showing. But glowing like it belonged to something ancient. Something not of this world. It landed in the middle of the temple courtyard where no one had ever landed before. Soldiers surrounded it instantly. Weapons up, hearts racing, but the doors didn't open. Not yet. The ship waited. And then, a single hiss. The ramp lowered. Feet stepped onto the stone. It was him, the human. But something had changed. His armor wasn't Zahari tech. It was something new, black, sharp, moving slightly like it was alive. And the sword wasn't just glowing. It was burning with light. Karel stepped forward. Her hand twitched toward her new blade. But she didn't draw it. Neither did he. They stood there, in silence. For the first time, as equals. You came back, she said. He nodded. I said I would. Her voice was flat. This is a suicide mission. No, he said, stepping closer. This is a message. She raised a brow. For who? For everyone watching. Behind the clouds, hidden ships watched the scene. In orbit, Council satellites streamed live feeds across multiple systems, and on other worlds where humans were still seen as weak, primitive, or just quiet guests. People were watching. Every species was watching. The human walked to the center of the courtyard. He placed the sword upright into the stone, not as a threat, as a challenge. I'm not here to destroy you, he said. I'm here to remind you. We may come in peace, but we are not prey. A murmur moved through the temple. Some stepped back. Others stepped forward. One general, proud and loud, shouted from the steps, "What gives you the right to come here alone and speak as if you rule this empire?" The human looked up at him, smiled, faintly. "I don't need to rule it. I only needed to show you your strongest weapon didn't fear me. It followed me." The sword pulsed, blue, gold, red, shifting like it was alive. The general snapped, "Seize him!" 10 elite guards rushed forward. Karel didn't move. The sword did. Without a hand touching it, it lifted from the ground, spun once, and stopped, hovering between the human and the guards. "They're not ready," the sword said, in a voice only the human heard. "They still think numbers mean power," he whispered back. "Show them they're wrong." The sword moved. Not fast, instant. One by one, guards dropped, not dead, just still, awake, but unable to move. The sword hadn't cut their bodies. It had cut their confidence. Karel finally spoke. "What do you want?" He turned to her, his voice calm. "I want peace. But real peace. Not silence based on fear. Not respect based on bloodlines." She tilted her head. "And if we say no?" He smiled again. "I only needed to ask once." Above them, the council chamber flickered to life. They had seen enough. One by one, council members appeared via hologram. The oldest, wearing a crown of starlight, spoke first. "You carry our sword. You've passed its trial. And now, you return not to conquer, but to awaken." The human bowed his head slightly. "I return," he said, "so the next time you see one of us, you think twice before you laugh." The sword returned to his back silently, his ship lifted again. No guards tried to stop him. Karel watched him rise. This time she didn't feel shame, she felt respect. "What will you do now?" one young warrior asked her. She watched. The ship vanish into the stars. "Train harder," she said, "because if there's one of him, there are more." In the darkness of space, alone again, the human sat in silence. The sword whispered beside him, "You didn't kill them. You didn't burn their world. You didn't rule their minds." He nodded. "That's not our way." The sword glowed brighter. "Then maybe your kind is stronger than they think. The champion false piece doesn't last forever. Not when it's built on pride. Not when fear still lingers in the hearts of those who lost." 3 weeks after the humans returned to the Zahari capital, the galaxy had changed. Alliances shifted. Treaties were rewritten. And everywhere people began to whisper one question. How many more of them are out there? The human had disappeared again, not hiding, watching. He listened to the systems that once ignored Earth. He watched them prepare. Not for war, for something worse. Revenge. In the deep chambers beneath the Zahari fortress, a room long forgotten was opened. Inside was no council, no audience, just darkness, and a machine, not metal, not flesh. Both. Karel stood at the edge of it. She didn't want this. But the council did. "He humiliated us," they said. "He showed mercy. Mercy is weakness. We must show him what true power looks like." The creature's name was Silkaren, never shown to the public, never brought to the arena, because it wasn't trained to entertain. It was built to win, built to kill champions. It had no voice, only purpose. And now, it had a target. The arena was reactivated. This time, no crowd was allowed, just silence. Soldiers watched from control rooms. Council members tuned in from satellites. And Karel? She stood alone in the shadows, watching, waiting. The human arrived by choice. He had received the challenge, a single sentence. Face what we kept hidden. He accepted, not out of pride, but because he knew they hadn't learned. He entered the arena quietly. No fanfare, no speech. Just the sword on his back and the calm in his eyes. Then the doors opened across from him, and something stepped out. It was tall, taller than Carol. Its skin was armored but shifted like smoke. Its arms were long, its hands clawed, its face empty. No mouth, no eyes, no fear, just hunger. The sword on the human's back hummed, an unfamiliar sound. "This is no warrior," it whispered. "This is a weapon, a mistake." The human drew the sword. The air cracked. The thing across from him didn't move. It was scanning him, studying. Then it charged. The first strike was a blur. Even the sword barely kept up. The blade clashed with the creature's arms, metal against something even harder. The shockwave knocked dust into the air. The arena trembled. The human stepped back. Not in fear, in calculation. He struck again. Again. Miss. Parried. Countered. "This thing is adapting," the sword warned. "Just like me. But without a soul." The creature struck. Once, a clean hit. The human flew backward, smashing, into the arena wall. Blood touched the sand, for the first time since this story began. He bled. Carel gasped. She didn't cheer. This was not a victory. This was a warning. The human stood. Slowly. His shoulder was broken. His breath was thin. But, his eyes still calm, still burning, he whispered to the sword. "You learn. So do I. Round 2. He rushed forward. The blade spun, curved, struck. This time, the human let it hit him, then used that momentum to drive his elbow into the creature's chest. A crack. Not much, but something. "Its armor's weak at the center," the sword said. "Small, but real." The creature hissed for the first time. Anger. The next 5 minutes were chaos, clashes, flips, kicks, dodges, both sides faster than eyes could follow. The walls were scarred. The ground was cracked. And still, they fought. Then the human dropped his sword. On purpose. He let the creature lunge, and used its momentum to spin behind it. Grabbed the sword mid-fall, and struck. Right through the chest. Silence. The creature twitched once, then fell. No roar. No scream, just stillness. The human dropped to one knee, bleeding, exhausted, but alive. The sword pulsed. "You should not have won that." "But you did." "Why?" He looked up at Carel, who stepped forward slowly. His voice was hoarse. "Because they fight to prove something. We fight because we have to. That's the difference." Carel knelt beside the creature, touched its still body, then looked at the human. They never wanted peace. They wanted control. He nodded. "Then let's give them a better reason to fear us." From orbit, the council watched the feed cut. They knew what had happened, and they knew they were no longer in control. Later, that night as the twin moons rose, the sword asked the question it had held back since the beginning. "What is your name, human?" He looked into the stars. "You'll know it when they speak it." The truth about the sword had gone quiet. After the battle with Silkerin, it no longer pulsed, hummed, or spoke. It rested against the wall of a quiet room as if it were thinking or remembering. The human was healing. His body bore the marks of the fight, bruised ribs, a cracked shoulder, a cut across his jaw. But his mind, it was sharp. He felt it now. Something had shifted, not just in the Zahari Empire. In the sword, Carel entered without knocking. She carried a data crystal. "You need to see this," she said. He sat up, taking it in silence. She inserted it into the wall terminal. A projection filled the room, old footage, hidden files, and words spoken in a forgotten tongue. The sword, lying in the corner, pulsed once. "This footage was buried under layers of code," Carel said. "Our people never created the sword. They found it." The human's eyes narrowed. "Found it where?" Carel looked at him. "On a dead planet. On the edge of the galaxy, a planet with no name, no sun, buried under ice. And there were carvings in the stone, language we couldn't translate, bones, that weren't Zahari, or anything we'd seen before. The screen showed shaky footage, soldiers uncovering a black stone vault, a sealed chamber. Inside it, the sword, but something else too. A mural, etched into the wall. A humanoid figure, not alien. Human. The human stood slowly, eyes locked on the image. They found it, before they found us. Carell nodded. The council erased the records. They kept the sword, built stories around it, claimed it as our legacy. He stepped toward the sword. It lifted into the air slowly, glowing once again. But this time, it projected something, a map, stars, planets, lines of ancient code. The sword was showing him something it had hidden from everyone else. "What is this?" Carell asked. The human didn't answer right away. He recognized it. Somehow, deep in his memory, his instincts, he knew. "It's not just a weapon," he said. "It's a message. It's a trail." He reached out and touched one of the points on the map. A star system far from the Zahari border lit up. The sword whispered, "Origin, unlocked." The room filled with sound, voices layered over voices, old, distant, echoing like memories from before memory. This weapon was made to be found, not claimed by blood, not owned by birth, but chosen by fire, by struggle. Carell's voice cracked, low with awe. "The sword wasn't meant for us." The human nodded slowly. It was waiting for something else to rise. He tapped another point on the map. A planet appeared, small, icy, long dead. "What is that place?" Carell asked. The sword answered, "Where it began, where the trial started, where the others sleep." "Others?" Carell blinked. "There are more swords?" The sword didn't speak again, but the map answered. 6 points. 6 lights on different edges of the galaxy. One of them now dimmed. This sword. 5 more still glowing. The sword returned to his hand, its glow now steady, stronger than ever. The human looked at Carell. "This wasn't about your empire or your pride. This was a test not for the Zahari. For us." Carell's voice dropped to a whisper. "But why would ancient builders design weapons meant to choose humans?" He answered quietly. "Because maybe they were us. Or maybe they saw what we could become." Flashbacks played in his mind. Earth, broken cities, burning skies, wars over water, land, pride. But even through all that, humans kept getting back up. They adapted. They survived. They evolved. And now, one of them held a blade built for gods. "What are you going to do?" Carell asked. He looked at the map, his eyes locked on the other glowing points. "Find the rest. Learn the full truth. And if we're being tested, pass it." The sword's voice returned, clear now, not a whisper, not a riddle. Champion acknowledged. Second trial activated, prepare for contact. The lights flickered. Outside the window, the sky cracked. Not broken, but pierced. Something was coming through. Not ships, not fighters, not Zahari. Something older. Something watching. Carell backed away. "What did you activate?" The sword answered. "The next gate." In space above the Zahari capital, a tier formed in reality. Inside it, stars that didn't match any known system. A signal pulsed across galaxies, not in language, not in numbers, but in instinct. Millions of humans across distant colonies suddenly looked up at the sky and felt it. "Wake up," the signal seemed to say. "One of you has been chosen. Others will follow. Somewhere far, far away." One of the other swords woke up, and the being near it, also human, opened her eyes. Humanity's warning, the galaxy was no longer quiet. Every empire, every system, every distant colony, they all felt it. Something ancient had awakened. The Zahari sword, once thought to be theirs, had lit up the stars. But it wasn't alone anymore. 5 other swords now pulsed with power, scattered across unknown sectors. Each one sent out a signal, but not to the Zahari, not to their allies, to humans. Some heard it in dreams, others during storms, or when their hearts beat too fast. The message was always the same. You have been sleeping. Now it's time to rise. The Zahari Council panicked. They sent fleets to the coordinates. None returned. They tried to hide the truth, but it was too late. Everyone had seen the map. Everyone had seen the message. The human, the first one, now known only as the Bearer, stood at the edge of Zahari space. The sword no longer glowed softly. It burned like a comet, but he wasn't alone anymore. 5 other ships had answered the call. Each one carried someone, human, a woman with eyes like storm clouds from a desert colony, a child with mechanical arms born on a mining rock, an old soldier who hadn't spoken in 20 years, a girl who once hacked a war AI with nothing but a stolen transmitter, and a man who thought he was just a farmer, until the ground beneath him revealed a blade. The bearer gathered them without words. The swords brought them together, and once united, the truth finally revealed itself. The sword was not a weapon. Not only, it was a key. On the dark edge of the universe, beyond black holes and time, something hidden waited, an ancient vault, larger than a planet, older than stars, made not by hands, but by will. The bearer and the 5 arrived together. Their swords floated into the air. They spun, connected by beams of energy. A pulse spread across the galaxy, a final message, translated into every known language. We gave you war, so you would learn peace. We gave you chaos, so you would seek order. We gave you silence, so you would choose your voice. The true trial begins now, and the galaxy will watch you. On Zahari homeworld, Karel stood in the war temple, watching the sky turn gold with the pulse of that signal. She lowered her head, not in fear, in respect. Other species, once rulers, once conquerors, now hesitated. They watched, they listened, and slowly, they stepped back, because now they understood. Humanity wasn't a background race anymore. They weren't just explorers or traders or settlers. They were chosen, not because they were powerful, but because they endured. They bleed, one alien leader whispered, and they rise. In the final moments before the vault opened, the bearer stood at its center. The swords formed a ring of light. The vault spoke with no sound. Not words. Memories. He saw a vision. A time long ago, when humans first crawled from the dirt. A message encoded in their DNA. A fire buried in their hearts. A promise. When you are ready, we will come back, but they didn't. They waited instead. Waited to see if humans would find it themselves. And he had. The vault opened. Inside, not treasure, not weapons, a single chair, a single orb of light, and one last message. The sword is not your crown, it is your voice. Speak now, human, and let the stars listen. He stepped forward. His voice was steady, not loud, but strong. We are not here to rule, not here to destroy. We are here to remind you. He held up the sword. We warned you, mocked us once, laughed at our weakness. Now look at us. We didn't rise to conquer. We rose to stand tall, so that no one else would ever be forced to kneel again. The signal spread across the stars. Millions of ships paused in orbit. Entire empires halted invasions. Kings fell silent. Queens lowered their flags, and in every corner of the galaxy, from broken mining colonies to massive palace worlds, people spoke the same words. Don't provoke the humans. They carry the swords now. On Zahari Prime, Karel stood before her students. They asked her, was he really that strong? She shook her head. No, not just strong. He was ready, and then she added something no Zahari had said in centuries. And if you ever meet a human, listen, not because you fear them, but because they already listened to us and still chose peace. In the quiet that followed, one of her students raised a hand. Do you think more of them will come? She smiled. They already have. Out, in the void, the swords floated above the vault, not resting, waiting. Because the trial wasn't over. Not yet. The galaxy had been warned, but more than that, it had been awakened.